Hello and welcome to another edition of Community Forum. My name is Joseph Feaster. I am the host of the program. When I planned this program, I had no idea that we would be in the wake of another school shooting. The program today will deal with the public school system, the Randolph Public Schools, and their superintendent who is my guest today. But it's so tragic that we are doing this in the wake of the circumstances which occurred at the Parkland massacre, which occurred there in Florida. Our hearts go out to the families and to those who passed in that tragic incident, to that community, and I'm hopeful that we now will get a solid response to this whole issue of guns. I'm certainly, as a lawyer, a believer, and as an American, a believer in the Constitution, but the Constitution is not a strict document, it is a working document, and we must adapt our responses in the appropriate way. So I'm hopeful that our political leaders will take the initiative that these young people have put forward and to address that concern. I want to introduce, in terms of the person who is my guest this morning, that's Thomas Anderson, who is the Superintendent of Schools in the Randolph Public Schools and has become a good friend over the past couple of years. In my conversations with him, he is a bright, invigorating leader. He is a East Hartford native. He has been an administrator for over 15 years in various places, but principally he was in Montgomery County, Maryland, a system of about 150,000 students. He has been a teacher. He's been in Chicago, Illinois as an administrator, a teacher. He was the founding principal and executive director of a middle and high charter school. He served 3 years assistant superintendent in the Washington, D.C. system before coming to Randolph in July of 2014. I could spend most of this half hour talking about his attributes, his skills, what he has done as an educator, but I'm going to give you an opportunity to meet and to hear from him. So please join me in welcoming my guest, the Superintendent of the Randolph Public Schools, Thomas Anderson. Good morning.
Good morning. Thank you for having me.
Well, thank you so much. And as I started at the top of the program talking about what occurred down in Parkland, but I really want to begin to talk because the reason why we wanted to do this program, which we planned some couple of months ago, was to talk about that Randolph has made some advancements under your leadership, and I think that would be a good place to start. Is to talk about to speak about that. So why don't you bring the good news to the viewing audience?
Now, again, thank you for having me and having the opportunity to be able to share, some of the things that we've been doing. We have in October 2017, so this past October, we were released from level 4 underperforming status after pretty much 10 years. So the state intervened in about 2007 and deemed Randolph as an underperforming district, which has always been interesting. So we had a level 4 status, but we didn't have any level 4 schools. So over the last 3 years while I've been there, and there's been a tremendous amount of work with a good staff. We have some tremendously dedicated teachers, and because of their work, we have, there are 2 schools that are level 2. So you have a level 2 high school, and Lyons Elementary is also level 2, which happened in 2016, and the high school happened in 2015. So there's always been a constant, there's the dedication and really focusing on using data to make decisions. I mean, those are some of those trendy terms that people use, but really coming in and putting the structures and supports in place and providing some capacity building. So professional development has really changed and really having a focus on what is most important, making sure that we have a workforce that feels respected. And when we think about the teaching profession, it's changed a lot. And there's a lot of stress. And when we think that we're in a system that was rated, level 4 underperforming, but we have people that come to work every day early and they stay late and they do all those extra things. So what do we need to do to really be able to translate that into student performance? So we've had increases in MCAS scores over the last couple of years, but I've also said to people, the MCAS is a data point along the way. We need to make sure our students are being prepared for life after high school. No matter what they choose, we want to make sure they have a maximum amount of choices in terms of whether they're going to go to college, into the workforce right away, do community college, 2 4-year schools, work, trade schools, whatever it is that they choose to do. We need to make sure that we're preparing them. So, with all of the all of that work and the structures that have been put in place, Randolph is in a very good position, to continue to make that progress. So we're, proud of our community, definitely proud of our students and our teachers for leading that process.
Well, I'm on my show. I always like to educate folks,
Okay.
and we may throw out idioms and terminologies and things and acronyms which have a meaning to you and me, but not to them. So when we say in terms of level 4, and even some of to be more descriptive in some of the things that you may have employed in order to get you out of level 4, because I'm not sure what level is Randolph at now.
So what has happened, because the state has implemented a new testing system with MCAS. So what they've done with us, at this point, they're not going to give us a new level until after this wave of MCAS tests go through. So basically so we're already in February, so probably in October or November when they do the reclassification of things, our hope is that we will be at least level 3. And because none of our schools are lower than level 3. And typically that's how the process works. So if you hear of other level 4 systems, it's typically because they have a school that is designated as level 4. And all of that is based on, there's a lot of configurations that go in there, but it's based on testing. Right. So for the average person, when we think about what level 4 means, the lowest you get is level 5, and typically that's state takeover. So there are a couple of systems, unfortunately, in the state that participate in that, and the state comes in and they implement or install a superintendent, during that side of it. But for us, when we're talking about the structures that we put in place, so when we look at the type of data meetings that we'd have at a school. So when we look at data, we look at test data, but attendance, information, common assessments, those type of things that students are taking on a daily basis, and seeing what's the progress, how are we tracking the performance of our students on a daily basis. And for the sports people, you can always think of it in terms of maybe basketball or football, where you call a timeout, coach calls a timeout, they huddle up, they draw a new play up, they go back out, they implement it. If it doesn't work, coach can call a timeout again. So we tried to do some of the real-time coaching that provides our teachers with more information on students, so we can make real-time changes to be able to adjust instruction during the class, as opposed to after a test score comes out. And so we can't, our shift in thinking is, it's not about a test score. How are we educating the entire student? And I think also that goes along with that when we talk about how are we supporting, we use the words mental health and those type of things in there as well, but how are we educating the whole student? So not just the opportunity to learn more academically about math and science and solving the quadratic equation, but how do we want our students to be as people? How are we cultivating them to be empathetic, being caring of others and being able to be supportive? So all of that goes into that process that we've been doing over the last 3 years.
I know that Dr. Littlejohn sent me a video, which you're very, very proud of, and I think just as this would be a great time in which to segue to that video, just to give them a sense, because I think that talks about the whole system.
It does.
And so if we can, Mr. Executive Producer Roy Cohen, if we can bring that video up, that would be a great thing to do at this time. Thank you very much.
We believe that every child can succeed and exceed from where they are.
We have an incredible commitment to making kids' experiences really wonderfully and rich.
We challenge them to believe in themselves.
And we need to make sure that we're doing right by them.
I love coming to work. I really do.
It's not just I'm here at 8, I leave at 3. There's more to it there, and that's a nice connection that you have.
The teachers are wonderful.
The teachers are great here.
It's a warm community full of amazing teachers. They show interest in my future and want to find ways to help me progress as a person.
We take that extra step in building that bond and that relationship so that we can work well together for the kids.
The people I work with are all very devoted and committed.
Dedicated professionals willing to take on any challenge to make our students successful.
What I love about the district is that there's a lot of diversity.
Kids are different, and they all come from different backgrounds, they come from different home lives, and we celebrate that and we use that to learn from each other.
Their personalities, they bring their spirit and humor and make this environment rich.
I do see there's an acceptance and a kindness
that I think comes about from kids being used to people are different than I am.
If you're a new kid, people always want to be your friend.
I remember a student offered me a seat right away, right when I walked in. Very accepting.
Every single kid has your back.
It's a friendly place.
Very friendly.
We serve over 40 languages. They should be really proud that they can speak 2 languages.
It gives our children more opportunity. They can grow by learning all the different languages and all the different cultures.
Borders really don't exist as much anymore with all the technology.
I want them to understand that there's so many more things out there than they might experience in this little pocket of the world.
We talk a lot to our kids about how in the real world, you don't get to pick necessarily who you work with. You have to learn to work with whoever's around you.
I want them to be leaders. I want them to be ready for global life.
Reaching out and building partnerships with other school systems within the state, across the country, and across the world to see how do we compare. We want to make sure all of our students are career and college ready.
Having the skill set to compete with others in the college community, in the working community.
To be successful and independent.
Strategies that we can use in our future jobs.
I want kids to feel that perpetual need to investigate something new.
There's a pride we take when our students do great things, and they are doing great things.
The goal is to just keep moving forward. It's an exciting time for us.
You never know when you have the opportunity to help change the world.
They'll be challenged, they'll be appreciated, they will be embraced.
Doing everything we can to make sure students achieve.
Desire for excellence.
It's one of the best districts to work for.
Above and beyond.
Well, we're back. Very impressive video
Thank you.
What's going on in the Randolph Public School system. What it brings me to, because again, you have administration, and as I oftentimes say on this program, my wife's an educator as well, but in the Boston public school system, so I mean, I have the affinity for educators. Yeah. How is the relationship between administration and teachers and parents? How do you manage that process? I call it the four-legged stool. It's in terms you have administrators, you have the educators, you have the students, and you have the parents. How do you manage that process?
And I think it's a good analogy, having the stool, because if one leg is missing or shorter than the other, it's going to have that imbalance, which is not going to be very smooth. I think we can never do enough in terms of trying to balance and having more engagement and two-way communication with our parents. I think that, as a parent myself, our objective is always, what's the best thing that's going to be able to happen for our child, for our children? What do we need to be able to do? What questions do we need to be able to ask? So we need to be mindful that sometimes we, just as we spoke earlier about not using, explaining a little bit more about some of the acronyms, but always making sure that we really reach out to our parents. So for example, I'm going to have a parent meeting next week, so the Tuesday following, on the 27th. Just really, I don't want to call it a town hall, just to not confuse it with town hall, but it's really just hearing directly from the parents, an opportunity where they can come and just share. It's not a question and answer session. I'm not going to provide answers, because we shouldn't have all. We don't want to pretend that we have all the answers. Sure. when you're posing a question, but really solicit feedback on what their experiences are in the district, and then have another meeting where I'll be able to share, based on the feedback and suggestions you made or the complaints that you had, here are the actions that we've put in place, or here are the things that we're working on. And so we kind of get to that. We have a lot of individual conversations, and we use school committee meetings to kind of put information out. But we definitely need to continue to always try to work and do better at how are we soliciting information from parents versus just putting it out there to them. So it is something we continue to, I think we can be proud of the progress, but I'm not going to fool myself thinking that we have,
you've arisen.
Exactly. We're far from having it mastered. So, we look for our parents to kind of put everything out there, and we're looking for constructive criticism. But we know sometimes things get a little emotional, and you can expect that. It's parents are entrusting us with their most prized possession, and their child, and we need to make sure we take each child, looking at what their individual needs are, and work that out and address that to the individual parent, and not grouping people together, because that's not, as a parent, that's not what I want to hear as a parent. I'm concerned about everyone else, but as a parent, I kind of want to hear what's going on with my child. And we need to remember that in our school system and how we're being able to work with our parents.
Well, it's evident that you've been able to move the system positively, and that's shown not only in terms of moving the barometer forward on the school or thermometer, barometer, whichever one you want to use as a measure, with respect to from a level 4 to something, which we know is going to be greater than that because of just where the system is. The working relationship with the teachers, et cetera, but more importantly for you, because you're in a political environment in terms of the support of the school committee. I mean, and your contract and their trust in you that you're doing the job that they want to get done. Time doesn't prevent me to dwell upon that, and I'm not. I just will mention it in passing so that our viewing audience knows that Thomas Anderson is doing the job that they want him to do in Randolph, and we hope that he'll be there for a long time.
Thank you.
But in view of what has gone on in Parkland, I do want to cover some issues because we don't have time to cover all of the academic pieces, and we may do that in the future show. But let's talk about, we have this mindset that what happened in Parkland can't happen here in Massachusetts in our schools. So we have the school safety issues, we have the facilities issues. Can we touch upon what's in place there? I want our parents and our students here in Randolph and Stoughton and other places, but particularly since I'm speaking to you about Randolph, what's in place to think that what happened in Parkland and other places couldn't occur here in Newtown and other places is really something that's just not true.
And it's, my heart goes out to those families and all the students in that school. And as a native of Connecticut, I was in Washington, D.C. I mean, I can remember driving from one side of the city to the other. I was on New York Avenue when I heard the news about the Newtown shooting. And so when you think about those things, it really strikes a nerve as a parent, of course, but as a human being, and then as an educator. And we think about what are the structures that are in place in our buildings. So we've always had crisis plans, meaning there's a very strategic process about what happens if this happens. Schools do code red drills, lockdowns, and the doors are locked. People come through the hall, check the doors, and make sure students are not visible and those type of things. So we already had a lot of that in place. And honestly, going back a few years to when I was an assistant principal in Montgomery County, when we had the sniper attacks that were going on at that time.
Yes.
So that changed a lot of the thinking about school security and safety and having more crisis plans, having the police involved in that process, having it where they come in, they're familiar with the building. So I translate a lot of that to my role now, where we work with the Randolph Police Department a lot, the fire as well, because we do, like all schools, you do your fire drills. But now we've had to increase it in terms of doing a lockdown code red where there is no visibility, everyone is hiding in their classroom, sheltering in place, and those type of things, as to another one where it just may be a shelter because something is going on outside. But that helps with the level of communication that we have with the police department.
And is that through all the grades?
Yes.
From elementary through high school?
Yes, it's a K-12 approach. And in light of this situation, again, it always sparks us to revisit and look at it again. So just coincidentally, last week, there was already a meeting that was set up at the high school level with several of the emergency response team that exists in Randolph, and just kind of having some of those conversations to see what changes do we need to make. All of our schools have what we call a camera phone, so you can't just walk into the building, the door is locked, push a button, shows you on the screen, they can communicate with you back and forth. It's a great step. We've had that for almost 3 years, so that's not something new for us, but we continue to look at when someone enters the building, how much access do they have? So looking at our elementary schools to maybe reconfigure some of the lobbies. I mean, we've been having this conversation for the last couple of years, but it fits into the facilities discussion as far as from the buildings themselves, how much access does anyone have? Just coming in and just kind of roaming around and going. So we need to make sure that we have limited when you get to that front door where you can go. And all that fits into how do we revise and restructure the entrances to the buildings. The drills and those type of things, that's going to go without saying because those are things that were already in place. I think what has to happen is as we support our students and have them be mindful of, it's an unfortunate situation that we have to deal with, but we have to be ready for it, and having it where we talk about the mental health part of it. How are we supporting students to say, well, we're doing this because this might happen? It's a little bit different, I guess, in the 40s or so when I would hear people tell the stories about bomb shelters, or out west when you have tornado drills and those type of things. that's, the tornadoes are an act of nature. Things we're dealing with now are, it's man-made, and there's some choices that people are making, and how do we better communicating with our students in terms of what are the choices they're making. To me, it's all connected.
Yes.
So.
Well, and that's a nice segue to where I want to go on in terms of the mental illness and in terms of special needs, the conversations you and I have had over the past couple of years now as to things that you have implemented in Randolph. And for me, the mental health space and the mental illness space is one which I am clearly in with both feet. And one of the things that I always say is that while I take the incidents like occurred in Parkland in order to raise the awareness issue about mental illness, the incorrect reference point is that mental illness equals violence, and that is so not true.
Exactly.
But that being said, what are some of the things that you have implemented? We've talked about them, and I'd like the viewing audience to know what they are, what things you have done in Randolph in that respect.
One, having more of a discussion about it, putting professional development in place for not just teachers, but for staff overall, so we can identify more signs with students, and not just, and again, not talking about violent tendencies, just seeing a student comes in and they're looking a little sad, feeling a little bit different that day, doesn't mean they're diagnosed as being depressed. It's they may need a little bit of support. So how are we reaching out and making people feel more, I guess the word, I would say, maybe more comfortable, more supported. So professional development has been huge, and just making sure that the staff is more aware, but also the type of programs that we have for our students in terms of, for example, in the elementary level, our counselors participate in what they created is called a success curriculum, where they go in, visit classes, have discussions about appropriate behavior, just how do you advocate for yourself, and just really taking it from the needs of the students, but having that adult discussion with them to let them know that, no, we're listening, and we know that something may have happened at recess where someone was picked on a team and one student wasn't picked. Well, we don't know how that child really feels about things, but giving them an opportunity to express their feelings and express their thoughts about what's going on, something as simple as that. Making sure when we're talking about equitable education, well, equitable education can mean lots of things. And we'd look at this as something simple when we're standing in the hall, as a teacher, I'm standing in the hall, I'm waiting during passing time, I'm talking to another adult. Students are coming into the room. You speak to most of them, but you may engage with the teacher, and one comes through and you didn't speak to that student.
Sure.
You don't know that you have just disrupted their day because you were someone that they may have thought of highly, but then you didn't speak to them.
Right.
And we think of ourselves as adults when someone may walk past us unintentionally that didn't speak to us, and how that may impact us. So things that are that small, just making sure we create more space and more opportunity for those discussions, to be able to take place. And it doesn't overshadow the academics. People think, well, we're talking about mental health, those are those soft skills. I said, no, the academics are the same, but if we're not mentally available to learn, we're not going to learn algebra and trigonometry or alliteration, all the other things, all these terms that go into English and math. So we have to make sure that we're providing an opportunity for our students to be mentally available.
Our time is dwindling down, and I want to do what I would like you to do is, what do you see for the future of the Randolph system?
The future for Randolph is limitless. And working with, being supported by the school committee, working with the town council. Right now we have 2 projects for MSBA, which is a Massachusetts School Building Authority, where they will contribute 76% total cost, covering the total cost of a project. So over the last couple of years, we've had the high school has gotten new windows and doors, John F. Kennedy Elementary, similar things. So right now we've already submitted 2 projects for 2 of the other elementary schools, which they approved last week. So we're looking at facility upgrades, looking at possibly an addition to another building. Our enrollment has remained relatively stable. We're looking to see how we can maintain that through creating more, again, we talk about space and the type of space that people want to want to be in. So the academics, we're going to continue that focus with the increase in AP classes, the opportunity for students to be able to earn college credit through the advanced placement classes. We have a global studies program that we're still building and getting it where students will have the opportunity to do travel abroad opportunities where they'll go for a week to 10 days in the summer. And so just, working with, through partnerships with some colleges and those type of things. So there's a lot to be proud of.
Well, that's great. I mean, I'm glad to hear about the partnerships, both in terms of the colleges. I trust that the business community will come and provide the types of partnerships as well. I'm glad to hear that under your leadership, Randolph schools are progressing. Our time is winding down, but I want to first thank you for being here. And certainly this doesn't have to be the last time, Superintendent, for us to do this. I like to see what does occur in the ensuing years. Good. But folks, before I go, I want to say, first I want to thank Maxie's, and they told me to practice that. Maxie's Delicatessen, who always provides food for this particular program, Community Forum. Thank you very much. I want to thank my producer, Roy Cohen, and cameraman Leo McGowan, and Michael Hammond, Jeff Pickett, and others who have worked on the program. One of my producers, Gina Cole, is home convalescing, and I wish her a speedy recovery because while I like Roy, I think I like Gina a little bit better. And lastly, folks, this is February, which is Black History Month. I want to thank you for tuning in. We've had some exciting programs during the month of February. The next program that I have is on March 1st, so that won't be Black History Month, but I hope that we've had some exciting topics for you to discuss. We again say we're sorrowful about what happened in Parkland, but nonetheless, let's support the folks who are here, support folks like Thomas Anderson, the Superintendent of Randolph, and our own superintendent. So I bid you a good day, and please tune in to Community Forum.